What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Unbelievable Nerds podcast. We've passed a couple of hurdles now, so we've got the legs going. The legs are running, the motor's going. Everything's supposed to look calm up here, and then like a duck underwater, our legs are flapping about like a mindless drone. But there you go. Welcome in, and thanks very much for tuning in. It's myself, Grimmy, and my glamorous co-host Bragster in this week. How are you doing, sir?
The dynamic duo's back. Look at us, Cody.
I know.
I mean, yeah, I'm all good. I'm actually excited for what we're discussing today because, I mean, it's been WrestleMania.
Yeah.
I can't, like, it's been what we've been building up for so long. And finally, WrestleMania came and it delivered.
It did, yeah. Both nights, I think it delivered pretty well, to be honest. Yeah, it did. It delivered pretty well, which I think we'll get into a little bit. But as always, if you do enjoy the Nerds podcast or the Streams podcast, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, all that good stuff. And yeah, I think we'll just get straight into it. So yeah, obviously last weekend, it was WrestleMania, biggest wrestling weekend of the year. Maybe not the favorite for some people. I know Rumble's a favorite for a lot of people. It certainly is mine. One of mine.
Yeah, it's mine.
And then I would probably say Money in the Bank's probably close to it as well. Probably will be this year with it being in London as well. Not that I know you're going, you swine. That's just probably what the podcast will be about that week. But yeah, so no, it's always a fun weekend, whether it's a good Mania or not. The aftermath is always interesting, which again it has been this week. I have to say. So I think, again, it isn't going to be a massively long episode. I'm not going to go into every single match. So I think we'll just start with the big topic of Mania, which was the main event. I suppose the two main questions is, do you think the main event lived up to the hype? And do you think what did you think of the ending? Do you think it was the right call, or do you think that it was a stupid call, like a lot of the internet is saying?
I have a controversial opinion. What a surprise, does Bragster have a controversial opinion? Match, good. Really enjoyed the match. Thought it was really well done. Classic WrestleMania main event, near falls, left, right, and center. Similar to what happened the night before, actually, with Owens and Zayn and the Usos. You need near fall to the point where, like, you're almost exhausted and you don't know when it's going to be, to the point where you almost stop believing that the pins are actually going to result in the winner. I think a good main event is one of those where you get to the point where they've kicked out so many times, they're just sitting there going, they're going to kick out again. And then when that 3 hits, you either erupt or you sigh. And this one was very much a sigh, and I think for the right reasons. So it's one of those that when it happened, I went, "Whoa, that's a controversial call." Didn't expect the internet to react the way they did. They did, but like, yeah, I think it was a very controversial call, and the more I think about it, the more I think it's the right decision. And that's purely because, and it's actually a conversation I've had with multiple people, was the only thing that made me go, Cody shouldn't win. And the only reason was, who does he face after Mania? Because the way that everything's was being built in the build up to Mania, there was no challengers being built for Cody post Mania. Like, classically you have somebody in mind who you think, oh, that would be a good first feud. There was no one that really came to mind, despite them going maybe back to Seth, but I didn't want to see that so quickly. After, obviously, that's all we saw Cody really do before he got injured. So I didn't really want to see him face Seth immediately again. So it was a tough call. And obviously, people will throw out names, like, I don't know, the LA Knights of the world. They're just like, you can feed as fodder to Cody. But I think when you've won such a monumental thing, I think your first feud is really important. It's actually something that screwed over Kofi a little bit. Was it built and built and built? They pulled the trigger on Kofi and then went, what do we do now? And I think that Triple H was actually quite clever and realized that he would be in a similar situation. Whereas Roman's story hasn't finished yet. for multiple reasons. Jay's an obvious one. I think Jay's the most obvious reason for why this storyline hasn't ended. Until we get Jay versus Roman again, Roman's story hasn't ended. You've still controversially got maybe The Rock. Like, you know, if they want to do that for the title, I personally don't think it needs the titles, but if they want to do that. Then you've got Seth, because Seth beat him, yes, by disqualification, but Seth beat him and never got a rematch. So that's, again, an instant first feud you could have for Roman post-Mania. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought of opponents for Roman than I did for Cody. Despite Roman having the titles for 3 years, I could still think of more opponents that immediately came to mind for storyline reasons, not just like fantasy booking matches. Like, because Cody, let's be honest, if I was to fantasy book, God knows how many matches, Cody would be in so many of them right now because he hasn't really had many singles matches. You know, Gunther's one that comes to mind immediately, which I do think might headline next year's WrestleMania. But I think that, like, there's a few different things really like in this, and I think that's the big one for me, was the storytelling aspect of. I still think Roman has these moments, and then Roman hitting 1,000 days. My mate put it to me perfectly. We're never gonna get this opportunity again, I feel like, where we have somebody near 1,000 days. You know, in the modern era, this is a once in a lifetime gimmick in Roman Reigns. And I think him reaching 1,000 days is a monumental moment. And I think Cody losing here, for me, just means Cody's going to beat Roman. Cody's going to be the one that dethrones Roman. And having this sort of like setback, him coming back up, rising up and beating him, I think it will be at SummerSlam. I think they're going to pull the trigger at SummerSlam and have Roman lose one of the belts. Maybe both, but he will at least lose one in my mind at SummerSlam. Because then he's past the 1,000 days, he can drop the WWE title, keep the Universal one, the one that he's got the 1,000-day reign with, drop the WWE one separately, and then you've got separate titles. How they do that, I don't know. My personal way of maybe doing it, although I don't really like it if it is Cody that does it, is through the Money in the Bank, because you could argue the Money in the Bank's only for one title. That could be a way of doing it. There's many ways of doing it, having him pull double duty on on the same night, just because he's like peed off the authority. Maybe Adam Pearce just has enough and tells him, you're defending it twice, mate. One against Jay, one against Cody sort of thing, and he loses to Cody, doesn't lose to Jay, sort of that sort of side. You know, there's multiple ways of doing it, but I think he loses one at SummerSlam. And I think it will be the WWE that goes off of him and then frees him up. That's the way I see it going. I like the decision. I get the controversy. What I don't get is the severe aspect of the anger. I get the disappointment. I do. I don't get the severity of the anger, given, let's be honest, Roman Reigns is the biggest draw in WWE right now. He is. That is a factual statement. He is a draw. And the other thing, until that moment in that main event, he was a crowd favorite. So people started to cheer him despite him being a heel. So if this is a genius way of getting Roman booed again, they've done it brilliantly, because Roman's getting booed out the building again because he's just beating the fan favorite, rightly or wrongly. Roman's getting the reaction that they want the fans to give him because the fans are angry. What did you think? Because I'm judging by your face, you think Cody should have won.
He should have won, yeah. I think you have built him up so perfectly in the circumstances that you had, where he had the Hell in a Cell match with his torn pec, went away for 6 months and came back and won the Rumble. You then have all the build-up. You basically managed to negate the whole Sammy issue, because that was the whole thing after he lost Elimination Chamber. He was like, well, he's got to go to Mania. You dealt with that perfectly and managed to swerve that potential pothole. And then you get into this. There was such a build-up over the past 2 weeks of it's Cody's moment, it's Cody's moment, it's Cody's moment. And then you don't give him it. And it's like, Cody felt like at this time lightning in the bottle, and it's like you only get that. You don't get that very often. It's like Roman's run of him siding with him and getting the titles and having this run he's had is light in the bottle. You then had another chance to essentially make your two biggest stars face each other, and then make the second one just as big as the other by beating him. And then you've just given it back to Roman. I get the reasons why. Like, I understand them. Like, I understand as a booking decision, it makes sense. But I just don't. I struggle to see, even with like another 6 months or another years of build up to Cody getting those belts, how you hit that crescendo that they were gonna hit. And I get Triple H saying that we're only in like Roman said, we're only in the third inning, and then Triple H is saying the story's not done yet. And it's like I get that, but it's like, yes, Roman's got these guys he can face, but if Roman loses those belts, he still faces those guys. If he loses those belts, Roman goes and has his 2-3 month break that he's wanting to have. Doesn't have to come back, which he's probably going to do anyway with the belts. He then can come back in the midst and then have a feud with Jay over SummerSlam, go away for a couple more months, comes back for Survivor Series. The Rock turns up, does his thing. If the Rock, because the Rock says he's coming back at some point, but he hasn't come back in the past 3 or 4 years when he said he's coming back. So we don't even know if he's coming back. So if you're hanging your hopes on the Rock coming back for next year's Mania, is that worth keeping the belts on for another year? I don't know. Yes, you can give him the belts back, but then it's like, why do you need to put the belts on him? I think if the Rock is facing Roman, that's your main event, regardless if they've got the belts or not. And then you can have Cody, or you can have Cody have the belt start the night, or you can have Cody be the main event for night one if you want. But I just don't. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they can book it another way. Maybe they can build up another year of him having everything go against him, like Brock turning on him on Monday or whatever. But I just don't see how they can get that moment again, because he's probably not going to have, unless they really get Roman like do some horrible stuff, the likes of like MJF level, which they won't do because it's WWE. I just don't see how you get anyone booing Roman unless it gets to that point where like it gets to the point like towards the end of the year where everyone's just sick of Roman being with the belts. Because if you remember 4 or 5 years ago, Roman won a belt, and everyone was like, and there was rumors going around he was going to have this sort of run, and everyone was like, no, don't let Roman have this sort of run. And then we've got to this position where he's having this sort of run. Yeah, it's been great the first 900 and odd days, but now that we're getting to 1,000, everyone's starting to go, do we want that again? And I think Roman's easily been the best thing in wrestling for the past 3 years. Like he's like, it's not even a competition. Like, he easily has been since he's turned heel. Like everyone thought he should have been. Since he's turned heel, he's been fantastic. And yes, Heyman's been a big point of that, and the Bloodline storyline and all that with Sammy and KO and all that. It has been fantastic, but there still has to come a point where him losing the belts could have been him losing the belts, and Jay. Well, I mean, Jay, the Usos were always going to drop the belts, but them all losing the belts at the same time is the perfect catalyst for them all to start bickering with each other and falling out.
Yeah,
and I'm sure they'll book it in a way where Jay gets his moment and gets his match, and it's all okay again with that side of things, and I'm sure it'll be fine. But initially, when I initially watched it, I did go, "Oh right, okay." I wasn't angry per se. I mean, I was annoyed because I was like, it should have been his moment. But I did think to myself, I was like, this feels like a big slip up. And I don't, and like there's times where you think, oh well, this person should get this or this person should get that, but it's very rare when a person gets into a main event of Mania and has the build up that Cody has, and everything's okay and it's built up perfectly, and then they don't pull the trigger.
Yeah,
like they did it with Bryan, and I'm not saying Cody's and Bryan's stories are anywhere near similar, but the build up of Bryan was perfect, where they realized like they couldn't go any other way.
Yeah,
and I think Cody, with the fact that he managed to somehow swerve the Sami Zayn thing and then get him still popular and over as much as he has. I mean, whenever you hear his theme tune now, that whoa at the start, it gets louder and louder every time. And I get that. I mean, to be fair, I know what you're saying about like there might not be someone immediate for him to face, but then you just don't give him a rivalry for the first few weeks.
Yeah,
you don't have to have a title fight the first pay-per-view. Like there's been loads of pay-per-views where Roman's not had title fights.
True,
and it hasn't hurt him. And you could have done the Brock turn with Cody having the belts, and then it's like, and then the jeopardy is, Brock. Oh no, it's Brock, or WWE gonna make him drop the belts to Brock?
Yeah,
and then there's that jeopardy on it, and then it's not so certain that Cody's gonna do anything. Because if they give him someone like, I mean, like what they did when Ambrose finally won it after Money in the Bank, they gave him Dolph Ziggler for SummerSlam, and I was just like, okay, that's what they're going with.
Yeah.
And then he drops it to AJ Styles the next month, and it would have had that sort of jeopardy to it.
Yeah.
Of could this go wrong? And personally for me, I think if when the time does come and Cody does get the belts, I think Gunther probably is going to be the guy that he drops the belt to.
Yeah.
Either that or Austin Theory or someone like that.
Yeah.
Those are the two, I think, in terms of the two heels, I think those are the two most likely in terms of how they'll build it. I also think that in terms of a first feud, you could have Finn Balor once his head's not got 14 staples in it. But again, I would have predicated that with him beating Edge in Hell in a Cell, which again, that could have changed in the middle of the match, and they might have just made a call because of his head injury.
I have a feeling that's a possible audible, but you just don't know. We'll never know until years down the line whether that was an audible or not.
And the other thing that makes me worried about it is the fact that Vince is back. Obviously, all the reports have come out how on Monday he came in and basically was changing scripts and doing all this, that, and the other. Time will tell if that is a sustained thing, because it could just be the night after Mania, and it could be the fact that he's in and he's in and around it, so he's decided to have a go.
Yeah.
But tomorrow night in SmackDown, because we're recording this on the Thursday night, tomorrow night on the Friday night of SmackDown, if we get a similar quality show, then we know what's happened. We know Vince is back, and Triple H is literally sitting in Gorilla, just making things go over.
Kind of. See, this is the thing. Is again, Connor's controversial opinions. Here he goes. But for me, it's more prevalent not on SmackDown, on Raw, because in my head, and this is the way I've sort of rationalized it, of like, number one, the Endeavor deal happened that day. So I had a feeling no matter what decision was going to be made in terms of whether they were rejigging anything or whatever, that Vince was going to be at Raw for the fact of Endeavor deal happened. Vince will want to have his hands on the first show that happened after the Endeavor deal. That's obvious. And the other thing for me is that we have to bear in mind to a point is the fact that this would have been Triple H's first Raw after Mania. And the way I sort of described it to my mate who doesn't really understand wrestling to a point is I went, because he loves the NFL, so I was like, if you watch the Super Bowl and you've got somebody producing the Super Bowl every year, right? And they're used to it and they've gotten the motions, they understand how it works. When someone new comes in, as the former producer of the Super Bowl, you'll want to be there to help that person out to create their show and make sure it all goes smoothly, blah, blah, right? That's how I sort of described it, and that's how I sort of viewed the Raw after Mania one. Because the way I saw things from, like, don't get me wrong, I did not watch all 3 hours. I have not watched all 3 hours of Raw since forever, because I don't want to put myself through torture. However, I always watch the highlights and stuff like that. Not one decision on that show that I saw, I could be wrong, but when I've asked people, no one's been able to give me one. This is where Grimmy gives me one right on the spot. Not one decision was made where I went, apart from what we've heard behind the scenes of what's happening, Not one decision that we saw on screen didn't look like a Triple H decision. The teasing of Bianca Belair versus Rhea Ripley has been teased since Triple H has been in there. Raquel Rodriguez staring down Rhea Ripley at one point. Again, like we all know, Triple H likes Raquel. Vince was less actually set on Raquel, didn't really like her that much. The Brock turning on Cody thing, yes, might appear on the surface to look like a Vince decision, but the entirety of Cody's run so far has mirrored Cena's run with The Rock. It has mirrored it to perfection. It is like literally you have stills. Like people have probably seen it on Twitter of the two storylines side by side, and it's a mirror image of each other. So we should have all seen it coming, really, the Brock Lesnar thing, because we've already seen the mirroring of the Cena storyline. We should have seen the turn coming as well. And yeah, I mean, like the other sort of decisions that happened on that card, from everything that I saw that happened live, looked very like a Triple H decision, which is the only thing that's making me have this feeling inside me that despite what the reports say, there's a chance, and I know this is, that this is still, yeah. This is still Triple H's train, and Vince, only for this week, the Raw and SmackDown after Mania, is in charge and is like sort of dabbling into creative, and then he'll bugger off again and let Triple H do what he needs to do because Vince trusts him again, because this isn't, unfortunately, and again, this is going to sound really bad. I feel like this is like the boy who cried wolf. I have heard Vince is back into creative at least 6 times on 6 different weeks over not even a year's worth. So there's only 52 weeks in the year, and I've heard it on at least 6 different occasions. Vince is back in creative. Reports are Vince is back in creative. Vince is back in creative. The week later, it's back to Triple H's regime again. And, I've heard it so many times now. It's sort of making me think differently about this one, if you get what I mean, because it's. I get
what you mean. Yeah, there's history there where it's reverted back to Triple H or whatever.
Yeah.
The reason it's different now is because Vince actually has the ability to have control and not get kicked out anymore. Well, not for the first 2 years anyway. Basically, in the deal with Endeavor, there's a thing where he will be on the board for 2 years, and then after that, essentially, he gets a payout, or he can leave or do whatever he wants to do. The reason for me is that it's different is because of what got reported in terms of what got changed. The fact that Bayley wasn't there, and Bayley had a segment, and a pretty big segment with Damage Control, and didn't even come out with Damage Control for the tag match, when she always has. Seth's segment just spoke Vince to a T because it was pointless. He literally went, "Oh, there's a party out there. I better go see my people." Right, he's doing a promo of some kind. Someone's going to come out and say something to him, or he's going to start a new feud, or promise to do something. Literally, loads of chance. That was it.
Yeah.
Right, great, fantastic. We've just wasted 5 or 10 minutes of the time doing that. Triple H wouldn't have done that. He would have made sure that it would have been in there. The other thing is, not bothered about the women's tag match happening, but in place of that tag match, there was supposed to be 2 triple threats, which was supposed to set up a match to be the contender for the women's belt on Raw, which would have done a lot more time and filled a lot more wrestling in a 3-hour show. And your first hour was supposed to be, well, in America, it was supposed to be a non-commercial hour. So basically, it was supposed to be an hour of Raw with a load of wrestling in. There was literally 2 minutes of wrestling from Omos.
Yeah.
And that's Vince all over.
Yeah.
That would, like, Triple H probably would have done would have had the segment with Cody and then had the first women's fight, like triple threat, to become a contender for the title, and then you have Omos coming in the middle of the second hour, and I just think that there's too much of Vince's fingerprints all over it, and cut back to 5 or 6 years ago, we had a very similar thing happen where he basically decided he announced that he was taking a step back from creative. And Bischoff and Heyman were hired to be in charge of Raw and SmackDown. And his exact words were, "I can't I don't have the time and energy to be in the weeds anymore. And literally, they asked him about creative. He says, "Oh, the big stuff I will be, but I can't be in the weeds anymore." And he said the exact same thing in the Endeavor interview. And I was just like, that's basically Vince talk for, yeah, I'm back. And I could, and again, it could be wrong. It could just be the first week after Mania. He wants to get his hands all over it because he has the ability to. But I just don't understand how you watch WrestleMania, you see the reaction that people got from it in terms of it was great overall. Take the Cody decision out of it. Yeah. Back to front, Mania was really good.
Oh yeah,
there was a couple of matches where I was a bit like, oh, okay, it's there for a reason. Like, fair enough. Like the tag, like the four-way tag matches, I was a bit like, okay, they're just spot fests. And
however, the men's one,
the men's one was decent, but like again, it was there to fill time.
It's a spot fest. It's that's what they're supposed to be, those showcases. But the thing is, we all, as you said, we all sort of took that step back and went, yeah, we understand why these are on the cards. As much as we're not like going into Mania going, oh, this is going to be really good. Yeah. We all knew deep down that when the match happens, we're all going to enjoy the matches because it's got great people in it. You know, we all knew that going into it. But I do get what you mean, and it's one of those things where, like,
time will tell.
Time will tell. It's the most annoying thing because time will tell. The only, like, as I said, the only thing that's making me doubt, like, beforehand in every other decision, I've always gone, yeah, Vince isn't back, and I've been right every goddamn time, right? The only thing that made me think differently this time was the Endeavor deal, and I think that's what's making everyone a bit worried in comparison to the previous times when the reports have come out, is this Endeavor deal, as you said, does give him that opportunity. But as you said, time will literally tell. It's a weird time in wrestling. Well, I say in wrestling, in WWE, it's a weird time. However, it's one of those where we're gonna, you know, we'll see from next week, because I think reports already are that Vince is going to be at SmackDown, but if he's at the Raw after Mania, he's going to be at the SmackDown after Mania. Let's be honest, right?
Well, like, you know, it's a different location though. Like, Vince has gone on about recently about how he's happy for Triple H to take charge and run Gorilla and this, that, and the other. But if he was that happy about it, why is he getting involved? Like,
good point.
For me, like, I'm not saying Triple H is perfect, but Raw and SmackDown have been 10 times better than what they've been over the past 10 years.
Much better.
Anytime it has been good is because they've looked onto a storyline that's worked. Yeah. It's not been by choice. It's just been luck, or the fans have given someone such a big overreaction. They've just went, well, we've got no choice but to give it to them.
The tag match main event in night one, I think, perfectly says what Triple H's booking does. And, you know, which is, you know, I'm always under the impression the most exciting match on the card, the one that the fans are most excited for, should main event night one, with the most important match being night two. And Triple H did that for the first time probably since the 2-night Manias happened. I felt like both main events warranted their main events status, and both delivered on their main event status as well. You know, I think from Rumble onwards is the first time I think we've really started to see Triple H's booking come into effect, because it very much felt like, oh, Triple H is just like weaving people in, this, that, and the other. It felt a bit disjointed initially, but it very much felt, Rumble onwards, it really you started to see that what Triple H has actually done is build a main event scene, an upper mid-card scene, a mid-card scene. Subtly had done that, because going into Mania, you could easily, me and my mate did it, you could easily write down it for each brand who was in what position. When we've never been able to do that before. So that kind of just said to me that, you know, okay, Triple H's booking is really getting into effect. And I hope, you know, I hope I'm right again. I hope I'm right again that this is Vince just coming in to help, you know, his son-in-law out with something, you know, and maybe Triple H has said, you know, I'm a bit nervous for the Raw after Mania, you know, or something like that, you know, has had those discussions with Vince, and maybe Vince has come in and gone, look, I'll help you for the first week, you know, after Mania, you know, I know you've never had to deal with that before, you know, because let's be honest, as much as cynical as we can be, that is what a father-in-law would do. Like, it is. And I hope...
I know, but this is Vince McMahon. This isn't any ordinary father-in-law.
And I really hope that I'm right, and that's the case, and it is just him helping out Triple H.
However, I swear to God, if you're right, I will come back on this podcast, and I will record whatever is needed, and I will apologize.
You don't need to apologize, because
I will put my hands up and say I was wrong and you were right, and that's fine. But anyway, we'll move on from that because we've got one more bit to get through in terms of a bit more positive news and exciting news.
One more tiny little bit before we wrap up.
Yeah. So if you live in the UK or anywhere else and you're a fan of AEW, massive news coming out of there where basically All In is going to be done and broadcasting live from Wembley Stadium of all places.
Wembley,
that's crazy. Like, Wembley Stadium, 90,000 person stadium, they're going to try and fill up in the UK. That's if they pull it off, mind, it's incredible. It's incredible if they manage to get that. I think they'll do it because I think it won't just be the UK; it'll be all over Europe that'll be coming.
Because I think the big thing with this one, in comparison to when WWE have come over, is the fact that it's All In. Right, this is the first All In event since the inception of AEW,
the original,
pretty much.
Yeah.
And this is going to be the big pay-per-view before. We haven't even had a confirmation that All Out is happening. We don't know whether this is All Out. We're like whether the UK
this is the big one of the summer.
Yeah, we don't know whether this is what All Out usually is, or if we're getting All Out a month or two later, like usual, because it's usually in September.
Well, it's usually the first weekend of September. Yeah.
So I have a feeling that actually, like, people are saying, they're going to do All In and then All Out. I have a feeling this is their All Out. I mean, they're really going to push the boat out. And if they do it like that, I think they'll fill it for the mighty good reason of it's their biggest event. So people from all over the world are going to travel for AEW's biggest event of the year. They're going to do it. And that is how you fill a 90,000 seater stadium, is making it like a Mania. Basically, make it like a Mania, but in the UK, because you're going to get the UK fans flocking in. We sold out a 30,000 seater. We can, so we're filling up at least like half of those seats, right? That's what we're going to do as UK fans. Then you've just got to make it such a monumental event like Mania to get the international fans and the Americans in, and you're going to sell it out or get very close to. And if they do that, it's going to be the biggest kick up the arse to WWE AEW have ever done. And it could be a massive turning point in, like, AEW actually being like I know they're a big company because I love them. They are a big company, but becoming a big company, like becoming on that level where people look at it like people do look at it like New Japan, but like New Japan in Japan, how it's received in Japan and how big it is in Japan. AEW and WWE being that trifecta at the top. If they manage to do this will just confirm it. And I know I'm putting New Japan there, and I know to Western audience is not as popular, but in Japan, it's the biggest thing over. It's massive to the point where they could, they sell out the Tokyo Dome every year. It's like that. And this will be AEW's first time of selling out a stadium like that to a point where, and in somewhere where that it's not been done before. And I think, it could be huge.
No, I think it'll sell out. I personally don't doubt that because I think there's enough interest in AEW everywhere that it'll sell out. The other thing, again, I was texting with my friend Jordan this morning about it, and I think there's going to be 2 or 3 big comebacks or reveals or people joining the roster between now and then, which will make it go. I think the first one is the most obvious one, which I think is Punk. I think Punk coming back is the first one. I personally think they don't announce this without him basically saying, "I'm coming back."
Yeah.
That's how you sell it.
But that's how you sell the stadium is Punk
because
alone.
You sell it with him. Again, this is the one I credit Jordan with because he pointed something out to me was Drew McIntyre.
I was going to mention this.
Yeah, because obviously his contract's up, and I thought because his contract was up, there would be a no compete clause, but it's only when they get released that happens. So because his contract's up in the middle of the year, there's every chance they could just go, even if it's just a one-off, they could just literally say, whatever you decide to do, you don't have to join us permanently as a one-off. Come play in Wembley Stadium, basically. And I think that would tip it.
Unbelievable if you have him main eventing Clash at the Castle and 1 year later being a part of All In. It would be unheard of, because I saw that rumor on Twitter this morning. People discussing on what if this happens with Drew McIntyre, and wow, that happens. If I will have to applaud AEW, because as you said, that's a big statement. Punk is a statement enough, but getting Drew McIntyre would be.
But I think the Punk thing is. I think the Punk thing is that it's either someone like Omega or it's someone of that level that he's facing. Because I think everybody, people have gone a bit off Punk, but I still think if you go CM Punk versus Omega, absolute dream match to headline it, you're selling the tickets immediately. Yeah. Like regardless of whoever Punk's facing, they'll sell the tickets. But him against Omega, it's a no brainer.
100%.
Or if it's MGF for the title or whatever. But personally, I think what might end up happening is they'll do All In London, and then they'll do All Out wherever in America the next week, and just have a back-to-back pay-per-view week. Yeah. And it's like, and I think that's what will end up happening. So we'll have to see. But yeah, very exciting. Ticket. I think the pre-sale's on the 5th of May, so we've got like a month to get ready for it. So fingers crossed to everybody that we can get tickets, and hopefully we'll be able to go. And hopefully the tickets won't cost an arm and a leg. But to be honest, I'll probably sell my left kidney to get it. So there we go. Anyway, I think we'll leave it there. Leave it on a more positive note than the cynicism of the first half hour.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, so as always, guys, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. This will be the 3rd one that's going out on YouTube and
put the thoughts in the comments as well.
Spotify. Yes, let us know what you thought of Mania and the main event, and are you going to try and get tickets to All In at Wembley? And leave us a rating on Spotify and iTunes and all those places, because ratings are king over there. So any good ratings, greatly appreciate it and helps us out a lot. So yeah, nicely, preferably. And on that note, we'll leave it there, and I shall say bye, and I'll let Bragster sign off himself, and we'll leave it there.
Yeah, bye bye.